today we have Brad Leavitt. So you're the owner of AFT, which is a finer touch construction. You're out of Scottsdale, Arizona. You've been in business 12 years. That's it?
Yeah, 12 years. March 2013. So yeah, this March will be
coming up.
This March will be 12 years.
And you focus primarily high-end, ground-up residential construction. Obviously, you have a strong online presence. We were just talking about your YouTube, social media, and you have the AFT Construction podcast. And not many people know this about you, but you're a high-level elite swimmer.
Wait, what?
I thought that's why you shaved your body.
Oh my God. I was like, where did that come from? I was like, I've seen Brad do a lot of things, but I've never seen him swim.
That was to lower your times.
Tyler's the best, man. I know Nick and I are like, what is he talking about? Swimming.
I was like, did I not know this?
No, we were at the Contractor Coalition in Boston. We were at Nick's job, and the sun was just coming in perfectly, and I could just see it glistening off of Brad's stubble. And I was like, "Damn, you shave everything."
Hey, I'm an open book, man.
So everyone listening, he was a swimmer.
I'm a pretty open book. There you go.
This podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. Are you looking to elevate your building skills and stay ahead in the industry? Well, then look no further than Andersen Windows and Doors Pro Views blog. This isn't just any blog. It's a treasure trove for professionals in the building space. And whether you're searching for detailed technical documents or handy tips and tricks, Andersen's blog has got you covered. It's designed to help you become better at your craft with insights from industry experts and practical advice that you can apply on the job.
If you're serious about honing your skills, head over to andersenwindows.com/for-professionals. Trust us, you do not want to miss out on this valuable resource. Just a reminder, if you are going to be at IBS in a few weeks, Nick and I will be presenting with Andersen Windows. Mine will be on February 26th, which is Wednesday, from 3:15 till 3:45 in the Custom Builder Central Workshop. Quick half hour of your time. So I'm going to be presenting on crafting your dream project and how that starts with finding the right clients. It'll be a quick 30-minute business discussion on how to attract the right clients that align with your vision and your business.
And a reminder, I'll be also presenting with Andersen Windows in the Remodeling Central Workshop, 3:15 to 3:45 on Tuesday. And I'm going to be talking about the power of the customer experience. I want to talk about, how delivering on an exceptional customer experience can advance your business, and also how to weave customer-centric practices into every facet of your business, from staffing to operations to marketing, and the impact that this mindset and attention to detail can have on your bottom line. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. Builders, it's that time of the year. It's International Builder Show. It's back, and it's obviously bigger than ever. Imagine the top pros in the industry, a first look at the latest construction tools and live demos that will probably blow your mind. Plus, it's in Vegas. What's not to love?
And here's the best part. Buildertrend is hooking you up with a free expo pass. You don't want to miss their booth where they're hosting educational sessions, customer-led demos, and the best networking opportunities on the expo floor. Have questions? Buildertrend experts will be there to help you crush your goals and make 2025 your best year yet. Grab your free pass now at buildertrend.com/MCIBS2025.
This podcast is also brought to you by Velux. You're always looking for ways to wow homeowners, and who doesn't want more natural light? With Velux skylights, you can transform any space by adding natural light without sacrificing privacy.
Bring life to focal points, including the kitchen or living room, or brighten up small spaces such as closets or bathrooms, and leave your clients speechless. Learn more at veluxusa.com/remodeler. Yeah, so today I wanted to dig into how you scaled your business basically from a one-man show to a team of 28 in a few short years. Some of the growth, the milestones, how you built your team, the systems that support that team, your leadership mindset, and some potential pitfalls along the way. So lucky for us, Nick and I get to call you somewhat of an informal business partner, although I think Morgan's looking to legitimize that soon. So you can be an official business partner, mentor, friend. So welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you coming along. So at what point did you was there a turning point that you feel like you needed to scale your business, and was it a personal decision, was it a financial decision, or was it just like the business outgrowing the limitations of you running everything?
It's a really good question, Tyler. I think it's multi-layered like business is. I think there's a couple things. One, I think with any business, ethos, you have to understand what drives you. So whether it's people, whether it's relationships, whether it's money, whether it's time. I think if time is something that drives you, or maybe call it flexibility, I think you have to have some sort of business mindset, growth, scaling, systems, all the above. I would say honestly, what I started to realize is that the customer base that I was seeking to build for. I mean, you mentioned, when I first started AFT, we were actually heavy commercial. I did more commercial than residential, and my residential was like a deck, a powder bath, small kitchen renovation. I wanted to do high end luxury, and what I found is that when you want to play in that field on high end luxury, I mean, it's almost like a commercial project, right? A lot of the projects we build, I mean, I
Yeah.
have projects over 30,000 square feet. I mean, that's a commercial build. And the point being is that the clients you're working with are very savvy. They're financially successful. They've built incredible teams and companies, and that's why they're in a position to do these projects that they do. They actually want the funny thing is, at this point in my career, I realized they don't need Brad on the side every day, but they want a team. They want systems. They want organization. They want documentation. They want communication. They know that when they built their large scale companies, I have a client right now that, had 400 employees, and he's like, I wasn't on every call with my clients, but
Yeah.
I want a team that I can trust that is going to service that client, and that, that's what I expect from you.
The client only wants you, Brad, or me, or Tyler when there's an issue.
Right.
And if there's an issue, it's because there's a fault in your system. And it's like, I remember I didn't have a lot of clients ever say this to me, but I remember one client specifically, and she called me. She goes, I expected you to be on the site, Nick. And I was like, and I remember my immediate reaction is like, why would you expect that? Like, what do you mean? And I remember having a deeper conversation, and it just was because my team wasn't performing. Like, they weren't doing, progress wasn't being made. I had a client call me today. It was like, hey, can we hop on a call? I'm like, I know what that means. Like, there's an issue. And we chat, and it's like, okay, well, that's not really an issue. Like, there's just a process issue here, and we can correct that. But I think you're absolutely right, Brad. Like, it's, ultimately, they're buying the fact that you can stand behind it, and what you practice is what you preach. If especially with social media and YouTube and your podcast, it's like, myself included, like, we promote so much good and talk about good process and the way we do things. I've dealt with it internally. Like, I've had some of my team, they're not on the team anymore, but I remember, a couple of them approached me. I was like, Nick, like, you talk about the way we do things on the podcast. That's not at all how we do it in real life. I'm like, well, walk me through that. Explain to me, like, give me an example. And I remember them giving me an example. I'm like, but why don't we do it that way? And it ultimately, we said that was the way we were going to do it. Like, we agreed as a team, this is the way we were going to do it. And you guys just on site weren't doing it that way. That doesn't mean like I'm not practicing what I preach. Like, ultimately, like, there's a process issue, or someone's not upholding their responsibility. It's, I'm not trying to sit on a podcast trying to pretend like everything's perfect and this is how we do things and our process is completely refined. But I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I tell my team to do it one way, or like we agree to do it one way, and then it doesn't go that way. And, so we don't do it. It's a little bit of, I guess my point here is, like, with social media and so many eyes on you, it's like, you want to be promoting the idealistic way to go about something, because ultimately you want, your clients to value that and your team to be pressured to perform at that.
Brad, being that obviously you went from doing commercial and then doing smaller residential projects to now what you're doing, how has you had to have pulled back in some aspects and then really stepped into it in others, but how has your role as the owner of AFT evolved over the years?
Well, I think to answer that, and this goes back to the scaling aspect, is I think at surface level, there's definitely a part of the personal brand and company brand, right? Brad Leavitt, AFT. If you're to go look on Instagram, it says Brad Leavitt or AFT Construction. To answer that,
with your photo, which I find interesting.
It is my photo. It's not even our company logo. It used to be, but
you know, it's my photo.
Yeah. But the point being is that like, I realized that, there has to be a face to the brand. I think there is value to that. But at the same point, I was really big on our team getting exposure. And so a year and a half ago, I know Nick brought up YouTube. If you were to go on my YouTube channel now, especially probably the last, 100 videos, it's my team. It's not even me. Like, I don't think I'm in any of them, maybe a couple. And so, when you think about scaling, when I knew I had to get to next level, to Nick's point, early on in my career, I would have some clients like, hey, Brad, I want you here every day. Like, you're who I'm hiring. I want you here. And I had to focus, to your point, Tyler, I had to start focusing on the business, on in the business. If I'm in the field, like when I first started AFT and I'm the superintendent and I'm trying to do marketing and business development and create systems and work in Buildertrend and whatever, like I'm never going to get to that point. It's just, I'm never going to grow. Like I have to take a hard line stance that I'm not going to be in the field. I'm not going to be the point of contact. And it was training my team, right? How to follow that line of command. It was training clients how to follow that line of command. And then hiring people that you can empower and, give them the authority to make decisions, allow them to make mistakes, to grow, to have their own social media channels that, feed into the brand, to be on YouTube. And so ideally there's a face behind it. So I have clients now that actually request certain supers, because they follow them. So you create these teams and it just allows you to start focusing on the business instead of in the business.
That's what's cool about social. And what I always found neat about social is the ability to tell that story and then almost develop the rapport with clients before you ever meet them. So you don't have to then sell your personal brand or your supers brand to them, right? They understand who they are. And it's like the first step in courting that client where it's like, hey, we already know who so-and-so is. I always found that a super powerful aspect of social that not everyone realized. So obviously you had to build a team here. What was the hiring strategy like for your first few hires and how has that changed?
So I'll give a couple funny stories. I just being open, you have to understand your weakness, I think, to be a good business owner, right? I suck at hiring. I don't know. Maybe I believe in people too much.
What was your process?
Just from like a track record, they haven't panned out?
I think there's a couple things. Like very early on, there was some, I was going through the interview process and I really felt bad for this like superintendent I was hiring, like his personal life struggles and things. And I'm like, well, if he comes in, I could help him and train him and mentor him. Terrible. Like it was like that, that emotional side that I hired him on emotion as opposed to skill. And it was a disaster. I had to let him go like right away. And
hold on, just not to mention like, cause I've done the same thing and my team sits me down like, Nick, what the fuck are you doing? Like this is, and I say the same thing. It's like, well, I feel like he has potential. Like we can mentor him and everyone's looking at me like, who, when, like what, like when, like we don't have the time and you certainly don't have the time. And it's, it was the same thing. And so like at this point, I'm fully removed from that except for like a final interview. Cause I'd get coffee with someone and be like, you seem cool.
It's so funny you say that, Nick, because I was the same. It's just
Well, you didn't drink coffee, but
well, no, but I mean, I've tried cold brew. Thanks to you guys, it's disgusting. By the way, it's the grossest thing I've ever tried. But
Cheers,
going
buddy.
back to that, yeah, there you go. I'm like, are you drinking like? Are you having a glass of wine, just some cold brew?
So if
Dude, your aftertaste has to be terrible as you're talking to me, dude. What are you doing?
last time we were at Contractors Coalition, we were trying to get Brad to try all different types of coffee, and I had this wish that he was going to wind up like Will Ferrell and kicking and screaming, where he tries coffee for the first time, then becomes like a coffee connoisseur. But he was like, "Nah, this stuff's gross."
Yeah, I tried, man. I just can't. I just that bitter taste is not gonna. I don't know. It's not gonna make its way with me. But yeah, going back to the hiring, there were two things. One, I was hiring on potential, right?
Mhm.
And I will say there is the business philosophy. I had a mentor of mine that's always like, Brad, the value of a good leader, like great leadership, is seeing people not as they are, but who they can become, right? And I think there's a couple meanings to that. I think if you were to ask any of my current 27, 28 employees right now, that they would know that, there's a camaraderie, there's a respect that we have, that a lot of them have grown in their roles, because I definitely have an ability to see who they can be, even if they're not in that current role, right? But the problem is on the initial hire, like I just wasn't great at vetting them. Like I just wasn't. And then you mix that into early on in the company. Part of scaling is you have to have systems and protocol and operations. That I hired this guy who I think has potential, doesn't work out. Then another guy I've known, he was actually my boss out of college, trained me, wants to come on board. He sees what AFT is doing. He wants to be part of it. But I had no systems. I mean, he's coming from the production world, very savvy, very smart, knows construction, but he's coming into an environment where we're doing commercial and we're doing very complicated residential. And when you have no systems in place, he lasted like 2 months and he's like, I'm out. Like I can't, there's no organization, there's no systems. My day's so chaotic, I don't even know where to start and stop. And so realizing that, one, I didn't have systems, two, I'm a terrible interviewer. Okay, I need to focus on both. And a lot of you guys know Spencer. I mean, Spencer, who is my number two, he's my director of construction. He and I were in college together. Like Spencer, he and I worked together for 5 years out of college, really 6 years. And then he left to do structural steel with my brother. So he left doing really heavy structural steel for a company called Chef Steel. They did the Diamondback Stadium. They do hospitals, like major university work. And these are major steel projects around the country. So he was traveling throughout Phoenix and Utah and New Mexico and California doing these massive projects. And for those 8 years that he was independent of me and AFT, he was learning Bluebeam and he was seeing how general contractors do pool plan scheduling. And he was working with these large GCs. Anyone in the commercial world know that commercial construction is very much CYA. It's very documented. It's very organized. I mean, it's a totally different beast in the Wild West of residential construction. And so he's being trained at this high level, and it's really his personality as well. So when I brought him back, it was almost like that winning formula. I have someone that's systems driven, that understands it. I realized in business, I'm much more the visionary, and I'm good at seeing where the company needs to go. I know the position that needs to be filled. I just don't want to make that interview and hire. So Spencer, here's the position we need, which he agrees, but you do the hiring. And so to your point, Tyler, it's like you have to understand what your strength and weakness, and now how you delegate that and empower others to have that ownership per se, to be able to do that. And the best story I can give is, I hired this guy 7 years ago that lasts 8 weeks and we have to let him go. Terrible. To where, I'm at the Coalition Summit in Minnesota with both of you guys, and I get a text that I didn't know we were hiring, but we were hiring apparently. They had interviewed someone, they hired him, and they said, hey, Brad, we just extended this offer. This new guy's starting next week in this role. And I'm like, and I remember telling the group there at the summit, I'm like, well, we just hired someone. I haven't met him. I guess I'll meet him when I leave Minnesota and go back.
That's when you know that you have some adequate systems in place. So you just mentioned you have specific roles for people within your business, and I think that a lot of times winds up being a characteristic of growth where you have to hire for a specific role. At what point in your career did you start developing these roles and hiring for specific roles rather than being a team of 2 or 3 where everyone wore every hat?
Yeah, that's another good question, Tyler. In fairness, we had some really good people working for us, and we were having some struggles. And this is, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Nick came down for our SWOT. We had a SWOT. So a SWOT is, strength, weaknesses, opportunity, threats. And so 5 of the builders in our Builder 20, including Nick, came down and interviewed all my employees. They interviewed clients, architects, designers. They interviewed trade partners, and went through financials and existing project. Bottom line is they did a full evaluation of our company. And at the end, the reality is that we had some really good people, but there were, right people on the bus, but in the wrong seat. And it was really at that point, a lot of us have heard that, but I think it's pretty eye-opening to me that we're a massive overhaul. I mean, you see AFT now to what it was 2 years ago. I mean, the amount of movement we've had from training and hiring and moving positions. I mean, after that meeting, Spencer was promoted. Adam was in estimating. He moved to to a different role. So like all over the place, we were changing personnel quickly. And to your point, Tyler, I think that was my first understanding how it applied to me as a business owner, that I need to have specific people working based on their talent and comprehension of construction in that role. And then I need to figure out some loose ends and create those roles and then hire the right people to fill them.
Yeah. And what does your training process look like for employees right now?
Well, and that's the thing. I think early on, like this one super I'm bringing up that, I brought in and, didn't pan out. I had no systems. Like there's no onboarding. You come out, kick them off the pier. Can they sink or swim? Now it's different. They come in, they're shadowing different departments, estimating, accounting, project coordination, superintendents in the field. So they're shadowing the different departments. We actually build a schedule. So again, working with Megan, who's one of my project managers, and she's on my leadership team, she creates a schedule for the new hire, and they are learning the company culture. They're sitting down with me to understand the company history, like what AFT is, what are our core values. They're speaking with all the different department heads. And so now they come on and there's actually a 2-3 week schedule and sometimes 6 weeks, so that they have a true onboarding. And it's not just, here's your computer, here's your phone, like here's your new job, go figure it out.
Do you think that most people don't? Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, how, I know that that's an ideal situation, right? Like having the 2 to whatever 6 week onboarding. I know, at least from experience, like that's really hard to fully implement. And you get these like sporadic hires that you're like, all right, we'll kind of do the onboarding. How successful are you at this point with like sticking to that schedule? Is that completely out of your hand? Like what is the success rate of that onboarding at this point?
Well, I think there's 2 parts of that, Nick. Is one, Spencer and I spend a lot of time with our capacity report.
Yeah.
So we track, and the capacity report, to break it down, it has to do with our current projects, right? Under construction. It shows what coordinators and what supers are assigned to what builds. It shows our backlog, our PSAs. It shows what's upcoming, the start dates. And so having a capacity report, that document allows us to really forecast manpower, the needs that we have and the roles needed. So that's one part of it. The second thing is there is a little bit of risk. And what I mean by risk is part of scaling, to your point, Tyler, is early on in my career, I had the mentality that I'm going to get the job or interview for the job I want, and then I'm going to hire to fill it.
Yeah.
The problem is you're always behind. You're just playing defense the entire time. You can't get ahead. And what I realized is that, there's some risk in overhead and growth, but for you to grow and scale, like you have to double down. Like as you make profit, instead of just pocketing that, you have to put into the company. Well, how do you put into the company when you're a fee business, a management business? Well, you hire better people, and you lose someone, you hire someone better, and you see someone out there that's, call it a free agent, and you bring them on because you know how good they are. And if you bring them on with enough time, Chris Turner, who works for me now, he's been with me, I think 5 years now. Call him a free agent. He was one of the best supers in the market. I knew he was. I'd heard that. And I didn't have a position for him, but I hired him so that he had 6 months. Think 6 months of overhead for someone, but he assisted all of our projects. He helped them get to where they need to be. And now when he's on his own, he's handling 2 of my most complicated projects. So the point being, Tyler, if you want to scale your job, there has to be there has to be some risk that you're willing to invest the time, that you're not in fire mode. And if you have a capacity report and you're tracking your backlog and you know what's coming, you should be in a position that you're ready to hire. Right now I'm looking at overhauling, which I've already done my accounting team. And so we've been on this for a while. I have a consultant that Nick and I both know that's been working with me. And we just interviewed yesterday the new hire in accounting. They're going to be starting, but we've been prepared for this. And this is going to be a 4-month, 3-4 month transition. But you have to identify the weakness and then look to fine tune it.
Do you think for a smaller company that doesn't have 28 employees, like obviously, you want to grow, you have to get there, and it's one foot in front of the other. But for the smaller companies, how do they account for that when they don't have the existing overhead, or they don't necessarily have an ability to have a competitive advantage aside from, hey, we're at the price point that you want to hire, right? How do you reinvest in the business when you're that small and you really don't have an opportunity to hide those numbers anywhere, where it's like, I'm going to hire somebody more expensive, even though we don't have the work in place for that right now?
Yeah, fair point. When Nick came down from the SWAT, would I have 11 or 12 employees, I think, and that was, and now we're at 28. We've grown quite a bit, but the point being is, even if maybe you can't hire this like A-level all-star that's out there, the core that we understand, I know us three speak about at the Coalition Summit, is you have to have processes. And what I mean by that, if I'm the one-man band right now and I'm doing accounting and QuickBooks and I'm doing superintendent work and business development, well, ideally at some point I want to be in the field. I want to get the accounting off. So how do I process a change order? How do I process a check, right? How do I, do a pay app to a client, for my billings, whether it's every week or every month. And so you have these systems and you know what to do in your head. You have to put that on paper. You have to almost checklist it, A, B, C, D, as you walk down. Because when you hire someone, ideally, you hire your first employee and they're going to do accounting. Well, now they have a reference guide of how they do their job. And, when I want to hand off being a super, here's my operating procedure, right? When we build a new home in Phoenix, you got to call the city, get the dust control permit. You have to get the water meter set. You have to get the temp fence up. Then you got to bring in, the guys to move the cactus and natural plant. So, there's a process and it has to be written down. So to your point, Tyler, I think no matter how small, like if you want to scale TRG, which I know you don't, that's kind of your business model, but if someone's one person looking to scale, they need to understand their day-to-day role and get that on paper so that when you do hire, it makes that transition much simpler.
So go ahead.
I was going to say, to your point, Tyler, like asking the question you asked about, like, a smaller guy wanting to bring people on even early, I think a large part of that goes back to that capacity report. We were talking about it internally this morning. It's like, we have 2 markets that we are actively looking at opportunities in, and we don't particularly have people that serve that market. So it's this delicate balance of, like, we know we want to be in that market. We eventually will. So when do we make that hire? Like, when we have the job, before we have the job, we interviewed for a project in that area, and we lost it because we didn't have a super on staff at the time. Granted, they had asked the question, and it's like, I tried to be honest. It's like, we're going to hire a super in that area, and we have 12 months to hire and train someone, which is plenty of time. But they were just like, yeah, but what if you don't? So like we end up losing the job. So I think, to what Brad said, like, having that capacity report and understanding where your backlog is, you do have it, that does give you a lot of the confidence to make some of these early hires. And it's, for me, I think when we've had slowdowns or slow times or time between projects, it's like, even when I was a super for another company, and I look at our supers here, it's like, dude, use this time to like dig into something super specific, like refine your skill set on takeoffs, or refine, learn a little bit more about Procore, or whatever the case is. Like, dig more specifically into the way we do things. And the last point I just want to make is, when you talk about processes and writing this stuff down, I mean, nowadays it's, most of the stuff is done on your computer, right? Like, you're doing a lot of this stuff on your computer. You can turn on an app that will just screen record what you're doing and turn it into an SOP. And I find that to be, one of the best tools, because it kind of goes back to that whole like 1% better every day, where it's like, just record one thing you do every day. By the end of the year, you're gonna have 365 or whatever, like less than that, because you don't do anything on the weekend. But the point is like, you're every day you're adding to it. And in like the beginning, it's going to be this small little document, and in the end, it's going to be like one of the guys in our Builder 20 group that's got 270 pages on how to build a house. And
well, in fairness too, real quick, is Nick, I mean, it can be busy as a super, and even in downtime, it's hard to write that down. So one thing that we did is we have production meetings. We have our meetings. Right. There's 8 or 9 employees. We're meeting every month or twice a month, and we'd sit there and be like, we're going to build a schedule for 45 minutes. Like, what are the steps? And then we'd leave, and we'd come back and say, let's refine it. And so you have to just start somewhere. And so we just built it together, because to your point, it's hard to find time, but you have to do it.
So it sounds as though, right, you started your business, you grew your business, or in the midst of growing your business, you realize that you have to create these systems, these processes, in order to continue to scale efficiently. And it seems foolish and silly from an industry perspective that every business is having to do that for themselves, right? It's like, you have to learn on your own, where there should be information, knowledge, and systems that we're able to duplicate or borrow from somebody else. What are a handful of systems that you felt you had to develop yourself that, looking back now, you couldn't live without, or it's like, these are the first systems that we would put in place for scaling, had we known now what we didn't then?
Yeah, that's another good question. Software has come a long way. AI has come a long way. I think there's a lot of value in networking. I think early on, from the industry events to social media, there's just a lot of common ground. I know my business has accelerated greatly between you two and others that I network with, and Builder 20 and all the different chapters here. But to answer your question, Tyler, is we're always looking for, different software, and how could that play a role in our company. So early on, we didn't really have project management software. We find Buildertrend, build a partnership with them, and that solved a lot of our project management side. Right? Accounting's still a problem. So we're like, okay, well, how do we integrate that in Buildertrend to get on the same formula? And where I'm going is, I was invited to speak at the Tech Summit in California this past fall. I'm out there. While I happen to be out there, there's a company called InBuild. And InBuild, there's some young guys from San Diego State. One of them worked for this high-end luxury builder in, I think, Vail or Aspen, Colorado. And they created this billing that's like, works with AI. And one of the most challenging things for a company that's cost plus like me is APAR. It takes a lot of time. There's a lot of documentation. And they worked exclusively in cost plus, and they're tech guys that understand software. And so the thing is, again, what I wish I knew then, I wish I knew. I mean, some of these softwares weren't available, but I wish I knew how important it was to at least streamline internally systems and documents, so you're not just working on Excel and building things by hand. But the point is, now, as you start to refine that, but if you have at least some sort of systems or protocol in Buildertrend, well, maybe now I can use InBuild, and we can become sophisticated where that's just a little add-on. We're using Bluebeam on all of our projects. Well, that's a little add-on. And so you grab a few of these things that add on to, now today we're definitely better off. But I think industry-wide, it is difficult because we don't have one system we operate on. and in fairness, all of us run different businesses, whether you're lump sum or investment or spec home or, cost plus. It's just there's a lot of variation. But if you can position yourself with other builders that work like you do, like cost plus, I mean, there is software now that we didn't have, 7, 8 years ago.
What software and tech are you guys using in your business that you couldn't live without?
So Buildertrend, InBuild, and Bluebeam. I mean, those are the three core systems that we're using, and they, in a way, all integrate together. I mean, I will give Buildertrend some credit here. Is that the QR codes was huge for us. I mean, some of these projects we have. I mean, we have 3-inch binders of design books. On this 25-30,000 square foot home. I mean, it's monstrous, and when changes happen as they do to update the field books was just a nightmare. So having QR codes that we can just do the update internally and the link is automatically sent out and the QR code doesn't change. I mean, it's just stuff like that where, working with a few of these partners and, being on an advisory board with some of these tech companies now, it's like we're working with them trying to say, okay, well, what's Tyler dealing with? What's Nick dealing with? Here's how we're doing it. How can we create answer here so that it does help the masses and it's just not pertinent to one person or one employee?
Yeah, I think as you grow also, like it comes down to communication and managing the work that's being put in place. Financials aside, just like how do you track and manage the communication between so many people, between your entire team? Like that's a challenge in and of itself.
Especially when there's so many different ways to do it. Like everyone does it differently.
Yeah.
We use Slack a lot internally, and at one point, we were talking, and it's like, hey, are we going to use Slack, or are we using text, or should we be just putting this in the notes, or are we using the Google Sheet? And I'm sporadic. Like I change whatever is working for me that day. It's like, but if you say, hey, we're doing this, like if someone says, Nick, this is the way we're doing it, no problem. I will do it that way and I will stick to it. And the more we refine that and the more we create structure around that, like the more I feel organized and be able to reference something when my team is asking a question, right? Like, hey, how do we do this? I think about our company handbook that I remember putting one together, which was completely like, it was terrible. I downloaded a handbook off Google and I like modified it. And I remember fast forward 5 years, I had a lawyer look at it and they're like, this is illegal. Like you can't, like you can't say any of this. And I had them rewrite it for me. And I remember getting the document and I'm reading through it. I'm like, no one's going to read this. Like it's this legal, like Times New Roman 12 point, Word document. And I end up giving it to Slash, our branding company, and they've created like a cool book out of it. I handed it out and I sent the PDF copy, and now it's like no one asks me what holidays we have off. No one asks me the company policy about something because it's like it's a useful book that has all the information in it. And and not only like is the information there, but it's also easy to use and a better document than just some BS Word doc. And I think that's the other hard part is like you can create all these systems, you can create all these SOPs, you can write down step by step on how to do something, but if it's not, I want to use the word like enjoyable to use, no one's going to use it. It's just going to be this very overwhelming document that feels like it's not like I'll just ask the question like, hey, rather than what holiday I have off, I'm just going to ask, hey, do we have Monday off or not?
Yeah.
See, but you bring up a good point, Nick. The problem is there's so much technology out there. There's so many apps. Like it becomes burdensome. I think it's really important that as a company, and I think even as large as we are with the volume that we're doing, whether it's yearly revenue, employees, I mean, all the above, it's like we're really operating off 3 systems that I mentioned. And so like if you can create, I don't want to say simplicity, but at least, minimize it to some extent, it makes it easier, because otherwise, man, you and I have spoken about this. It's just, you could be all over the place.
Yeah. It's like, what are we using? Like what? Like are we now? We're using this. Now we're using that. I mean,
like my guys they have iPads. Like, I mean, a lot of them now, we don't even get on laptops anymore. They have an iPad. It has Bluebeam, it has Buildertrend, and it has inbuilt. I mean, so they're on their iPad. They understand how to use it. They're using Bluebeam for all their punch lists. They're using Buildertrend for all their scheduling and daily logs. And so it's simple. They have these great carrying cases, and you're just training them, and they can learn and they become proficient. I mean, most of them have no idea how to work on Bluebeam. Some not even iPad, and they become very seasoned because they can just learn and focus on one thing.
You can't call it a case. It's a super satchel.
It's a super satchel.
What, they hold their iPads?
That is what you called it,
no,
Brad.
It's a super satchel. Like, it's like Indiana Jones. It's a super satchel. It's
like, hold on. Let's be clear. Like, it's not like a super, like as in like awesome or big. It's a super as in like a superintendent satchel.
Oh, okay.
It's a satchel. It's like an Indiana Jones satchel.
And I think it was the last time you were on this podcast. You're like, if they're not wearing it and taking notes, they're fired. And everyone lost their shit over that. They're like, Brad fires people if they don't use their iPad. And it's like,
they should be fired.
Yeah, right.
No,
I'm with you. Like, it's
like Patterson,
it's the principle. Like,
it's the principle. I mean, you're not going to just fire them because they don't have their iPad charged.
Right. But it's like, this is your job description, is to take notes while we walk the job. We had an employee. He left a couple months ago, but we were in a meeting, and I'm like, "Are you going to take notes?" I'm like, I remember. I'm like, "Well, we're in a meeting about you not remembering things right now, so I would suggest,
or at least pretend
that you take notes." And okay, yeah, I'll take notes. I'm like, God, this is not going well.
Well, it's just funny because so early on in my career, I was able to work on this incredible project, and I mean, I literally watched where the third walk in a row, the superintendent didn't have his notepad, and the owner fired him right there, like right in front of me. Because how can you be a superintendent if you're not writing stuff down? You're not going to remember this stuff. And there is some principle there to where these guys know, like, you have to write stuff down. You have to document it. It's way too cumbersome. So I mean, if they're not writing stuff down and using an iPad, they should be terminated. But the super satchel, there's actually a funny video because we give Spencer a hard time because he loves Sunny Delight. I'm like, nobody drinks
How
Sunny
old
D.
Is he?
That is a ridiculous,
and it's disgusting.
It's disgusting, but I have some great videos I could send you guys. So there's actually a video on YouTube. You can see them where it's super satchel, which, they have their iPad and they have their level and their, their pen and Sharpie and tape measure and so forth. But then, he carries Sunny D with him. So
that's so weird. That stuff's disgusting.
Yeah, that is kind
I didn't even know they made it anymore. Maybe you should switch to Tang.
Oh my God, I forgot about Tang.
Tang's even worse, man.
Yeah.
They're both bad.
Hey guys, real quick pause from the podcast. Just a reminder, head over to moderncraftsman.co and sign up for our newsletter. We send out a weekly newsletter with a bunch of information on this week's episode, as well as some free goodies. And of course, everything that we've been promoting. We've been doing this podcast for 8 years now and have had some amazing conversations, but it's time for us to get tactical and give you guys real world resources. And Tyler and I are committed to doing that in a really big way. So make sure you sign up for the email. We'll show you everything that we've been working on behind the scenes if you do that.
So as you grow your business and scale it, every aspect of your business is going to change, especially from a financial perspective. And I think a lot of people believe that, hey, we 2x'd our volume this year, so it's just proportional throughout the entire realm of our business, but that's not the case, and things scale differently. But I think from a cash flow perspective, that would be really difficult as you grow so quickly to understand how to manage your cash flow. Did you guys use projections, or how did you manage what you guys needed to be able to keep your business afloat from a cash flow perspective as you changed your model and grew your business?
It's a great point, Tyler, because again, going back to it, I think at principle, scaling is not for everybody. And what I mean by that is, as no matter how good your company culture is, you're going to be dealing with, when you have 30 employees as opposed to 3, there's inner conflict, right? There's people maybe not working as hard as someone else and complaining or comparing. I mean, it's human nature. So are you in the business to build people, Like, are you in the business to build a business, not just homes? Like, what's your ethos? Understanding that by building a business, maybe it gives me more flexibility and time. But to your point, Tyler, just because you do have more employees and more revenue doesn't mean you're making more money. In some cases, a lot of builders would be out there to say, I actually made more money when I had 4 employees as opposed to 24. And so, to answer your question, capacity report, backlog, deposits, budgets for the year, understanding what you're going to spend on budgets, understanding projections. Like, for me, it's down to the point where I'm a cost plus contractor. So I have goals every month depending on, I look at the full year in advance, what projects are in the ground and which ones are coming up, so that I know the highs and lows, just like a salesperson that's looking at commission. What's going to be this roller coaster throughout the year in January to July, like July to December. What does that look like for me from my monthly billings? And then every month I'm tracking that. Did I bill X dollars a month based on my overhead? Because I know what my cost plus is. I know what personnel hit overhead and don't bill to the job. So you have to understand financials at a deep level if you're going to scale, because otherwise you may think you're making money and you're losing it really fast.
Yeah, especially because so many of your percentages and your overhead, it's based on this projection of what you're going to put in place over the year. So if you're not managing that, or if your sales volume or your receipts is different than what you anticipated, those percentages might not cover what you anticipated for the year.
Yeah, to your point, Tyler, the thing is you look at that. The problem is as you're looking at budgets and money, I mean, you have to hit payroll. You have to know who's not billing to the job, what is billable to the job. I mean, it's something that I should have been looking at a fine tooth comb early on. And now I do that. I have a much more understanding of what my burden rate is, what my expense is, what that overhead looks like. Because, as you get bigger, I always think back to The Office. It's kind of funny because, Michael Scott, when he starts the Michael Scott Paper Company, you guys may not watch The Office, but, he just thinks by selling product cheap, he's going to scale. But then, it gets complicated because you have to hire more drivers. But the point being is that as you scale, like, your overhead in a way is probably bigger, right? I have 2 offices now. I didn't have 2 offices before. So that's overhead, right? How does that play into it? And so all that factors into, the budgets you put together.
It's also, I just think that things can change so quickly, and they can change depending on what type of work you put in place and what's actually happening. And I think that so many people believe that they make money when they sell the job, right? Like, I sold this job and it's for X amount, and this is what's going to make us money and going to keep the business afloat for the next 6 months. Where in actuality, you make your money on the back end of that project. You make your money on how you manage that project, how much work goes into it, how closely you can control the amount of time that's invested in that project to what you budgeted and what's billable to the client. And it's sometimes regardless of what you sold that project for.
It's funny you bring that up because I think, Tyler, this was the first time you came to the summit, but we had Timothy Wingate on, and he asked a question. He said, what's more important to a business, estimating or scheduling, right? And everyone raises their hand that it's estimating, because if you miss stuff on your bid, it'll kill you, right? Because now you're eating those costs. And over it's scheduling. And the funny thing is about your point here, Brad 2.0 now as opposed to Brad 1.0, we become obsessed about the schedule, right? Spencer and I, because if you want to lose money, take a long time to build a house.
Yeah.
That supervision and labor, that what ends up happening is clients get frustrated, even if you're cost plus, they don't want to pay that anymore. And the longer the project takes, the more admin you have. And so it's not the sale, our sales team, business development team maybe want money as commission up front. But to your point, Tyler, until that job's done and you turn over keys and you know what that looks like there's no way that you have a good feel of what that profit is until you finish that job and that supervision and labor is finished or that overhead's complete.
Yeah. It's most people that I speak with, and most of the time the people I'm speaking with, it's on a different scale. But I think at the end of the day, they don't think that the budgets that their clients are willing to pay or their market is willing to really provide them with the margins they need to succeed. And I realize, and it's something that I did for years, is I overinvested in the back end. I'd land a job and then say, okay, that's what I'm doing the job for. Now I need to complete the job, rather than manage that job on a day-to-day basis on the back end, saying, this is what I allocated for this portion of the job. This is how much time we have for this portion, and put forth what we budgeted as far as time goes. And yeah, it's give and take there. But if you were to track that on the back end, you're actually going to guarantee whatever profits you need to make on that job, because you're not going to spend 3 days on something that you only budgeted 1 day for. So I think it is super important to be able to manage that on the back end, especially as you scale, because it's not just your own time. It's not just sweat equity. It's literally costing you money to put people on that project.
I mean, if you're self-performing, Tyler, as you do, and something takes twice as long as you thought, I mean, it's the labor that kills you. It's the material is fairly straightforward.
Yeah.
But it's the labor that gets you, and it's no different in management. It's the same thing.
Yeah. What has there ever been a time in your business where you've taken on debt or outside investment, and how did you navigate that through growth?
So fortunately, as far as the business operation goes, I have a line of credit. I've never used it. I have no debt. We're cash positive. We operate month to month. Like, we're good from a cash flow perspective as far as that goes. However, the reason I bring it up is I've done 2 specs in my career. That's it. I mean, to date, everything's been build to suit, cost plus. I had some lump sum early on pre-COVID, but the one of the projects I had, again, this is a long relationship we have. Like, I'm sure both of you understand that, for me, my relationship with the client is typically 5 years, maybe 4, but sometimes 3, but not less than 3. And from pre-con to budgets to permit to build vertical to move in, everything else, right? And so we had a project. We spent 2 years in pre-construction. This is in the pandemic. We finally get to permit, at Bennett Adventure. And right then the client's like, my position at my company's changed. They were from out of state. We can't afford this bill. The pricing's gone up a little bit. My career, I'm not making as much. Brad, do you want the house for what we put into it? And so I did go get capital. I went to a couple investors because I knew that where the market was going, and we're buying it at cost from where he purchased this in 2018, it was going to be a great investment. So in that case, Tyler, yeah, we didn't have to do a hard money loan. I didn't have to go get debt from like a commercial bank. Had some investors put in some money, paid them, interest rate, so there's carrying costs throughout the build that you have to factor in. And around the same time, we did another spec. And so there were 2 specs we've done that we've, taken capital and worked out an investment deal that we had skin in the game, the investor did, and that it would be mutually beneficial for both partners. But outside of that, and this goes back to the value of relationships and networking, is understanding my business a lot more now about taking deposits. I'm not your bank. I'm not cash flowing your project. If you want me to be the bank, then we're going to change the terms of this agreement, right? I mean, Nick and I have a builder in our Builder 20 that he says clearly, if you don't pay me within 4 days of the pay application, it's like 25% interest. And we're like, are you a credit card company? He's like, I'd rather know now if you don't plan on paying me, from the beginning. And so you just learn to be a little bit more bullish as far as deposits, and that I'm not your bank. I'm not cash flowing the project, and I need operating income to manage this. And then you build month to month and you figure out how you're going to refund that deposit. But it puts you in a position where ideally you're not holding the bag at the end of the day.
Yeah. And I think that takes like experience and confidence to be able to do that. Which
On
is
the
a big shift in business. I think when you become confident in yourself to have those conversations and actually stick up for yourself, and like you said, be bullish, that it can really change the way that you operate as a business.
On that same note, Brad, like, obviously very fortunate to be in a position where you've always been cash flow positive. Let's remove the specs from the equation, but what are your thoughts on having a line of credit, using debt to scale, things like that? I think generally speaking, you're an anomaly in the industry. A lot of guys do take on debt, do use the line of credit. So when you think through that, in terms of growing and scaling, what are the things that, or I guess first and foremost, would you ever put yourself in a position to do that if push came to shove?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Nick. And I have. I mean, some may know that my brother and I started our own steel company. I mean, I gave the example of Spencer working with them. Well, I brought Spencer back to AFT, and then about a year later, convinced my brother to start our own company, Alignment Steel. So we have our own steel company. We have debt. I mean, we had debt to start that company.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are 3 years later, 3.5, and we're operating now. Like now we're good to go. But commercial's much different. I mean, AR in commercial, I mean, you're not paid till the contractor gets paid. And they're not going to redline that contract. You're working for Hensel Phelps and McCarthy and, Whiting Turner, some of these companies, like they will leverage you. You have retention out there. And so you're always in arrear, like you're always behind. And so we do have a line of credit, and we have to strategize on deposits and purchasing structural steel and, the labor side of the erection and fabrication and so forth. But so, yeah, in that business, we do take on debt. And I think you have to understand backlog and the risk involved to what jobs are going to pay and may not pay you and what GCs may stiff you or clients may stiff you. And, you have to do background checks on every project and who is paying the GC to make sure you're covered. So we have experience and we look at that. As far as AFT goes, I'm not opposed to that. I mean, keep in mind, because we're cost plus, because we're not self-performing, it's a little bit easier that I can hire when I have projects or I know projects are upcoming, and then I take the risk I'm going to bring them on, to train them and onboard them. But it's a little bit different than someone who's maybe lump sum and needs a line of credit. And so, yeah, if you're doing development, I mean, we have a builder in our Builder 20, Nick. We have a lot of peers. I mean, I just interviewed Lou on my podcast in Texas, and he takes on a ton of debt. But why? Because he doubles down, and these are going to be good investments. And, it's not a bad deal. Like it's not a bad thing as long as you understand the risk involved and what your business profitability may look like.
Yeah, it comes down to percentages at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. And risk. I mean, what's your tolerant for risk? I mean, I don't know if you guys have equipment. I don't have equipment. So if I was purchasing equipment and then I could leverage that equipment and I could depreciate that equipment for tax purposes, and there is value to bring on debt. I just to be clear, I am not of the mindset that you should only buy it if you have cash or pay cash for everything or have no debt. I am 100% against that. I don't think that's a great strategy. I just think it depends on what the business is. AFT at itself right now doesn't need that. But like I mentioned, Alignment Steel, or if I was starting an earthwork company, a civil company, right? If I'm out there doing concrete, no, like you leverage that. You don't wait to buy your concrete truck till you have cash. Like, no, you leverage that. You get debt on it. You depreciate that. You work with your tax consultant. I think that it's just my philosophy. But everything I'm learning is you don't have to be, have cash for everything.
No, I mean there's in simplest forms, it just comes down to like what your rates are and if you can offset them, and if sometimes you can borrow money for less, you can make more money borrowing money. And there's a lot of people who make a ton of money on a financial perspective where it's like, yeah, I can move these percentages around and actually make more money borrowing money than parting with my cash or leaving it invested. And I think that it comes down to that.
Well, real quick, Tyler, even someone like me that's management, I mean, there was a time there where I could purchase a vehicle for my team and I'm getting at 1 or 2% interest rate from the dealership, and I could put it in a sweep account and make 3 or 4%. And so you
it
can
doesn't
leverage
make any sense.
No, you'd rather make money on your money through a sweep account through your bank. And yeah, I had debt in that way, maybe not a line of credit, but debt on a few vehicles.
That's a very smart way to make debt, because at the end of the day, you're making percentages by maintaining your cash rather than parting with it.
Right.
But as far as like your business now, obviously it's scaled, it's grown, you need more work to offset the overhead of your business. How has your marketing strategy changed over the years with regard to client base, but also ensuring that you have sufficient lead generation?
Yeah, that's challenging. I mean, um, you have to have work. You have to make sure it's positioned with the right people. It's understanding now that certain jobs, although they may be appetizing, won't be beneficial because of the overhead involved, right? So, from a marketing strategy, a couple things. One is I rebuilt my entire website. I worked with Caitlin Slocum. I think she was on the Modern
Yeah.
Craftsman a while back.
Yeah.
So, Caitlin reached out to me, and I was really impressed. I hired her to do my website. This was a while back, and one of the big things was, Nick and I definitely aligned this way that we've always been marketing. I know early on I always marketed to who I wanted to be, not where I was, right? So I was always looking down that pipeline, Tyler, to like, this is what we do. Here are the pain points, thought leadership, company culture, the quality, AFT team walks. As we're doing the podcast right now, we have a project with Studio McGee that's going to be closing in a month, and my whole team is there doing a team walk. I will get content there from Paula and Ryan and those guys, and I'll market that because I want to show the customer base that like we're doing things that other builders aren't, like trying to set the tone, right? But to answer that is going back to Caitlin's example, the website is I was getting leads, so many phone calls of, hey, do my remodel, do my ADU, do my pool house, do my, Brad, we want to build, I mean, just crazy stuff. I want to do this basement on a hillside. I want it net zero and I want to spend $150 a square foot. And you're like, what are we doing like this? So with Caitlin, I said, I want, when people reach out, I'm just going to tell them like the minimum. Do you plan on building 600 to 750 a foot, 750 to 1,000, or 1,000 up? I think I have three choices, and we don't have anything under 600 a foot. And what I started realizing is one, it's positioning ourselves that when people just cold call or reach out, then, we're already putting them in a level that they understand, the building cost based on the
Yeah, they're
product we're doing.
self-qualifying.
Right. I think one of the secrets out there that a lot of people don't use are Google Maps. I think it's incredible SEO. So having good ratings and rankings on Google Maps and managing your Google Map profile, which I've done, you can verify that through Google, adds a tremendous amount of value to the company. I'm working with a company out of California doing some SEO Google stuff for this, the Google search. All my social media is organic. However, I do invest a lot in media like Nick does. So I have Jesse who's doing YouTube, and he's doing like YouTube. I've spent a lot of money, even though I don't have a ton of followers, but Instagram's done well. LinkedIn, as you guys know, I'm very big. I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn. And I think, it's really diversification. As you grow your business, yeah, you can focus on Google Maps and SEO and LinkedIn and YouTube. I couldn't do all that in the beginning. And so you're just recycling content. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of networking. It's building close relationships with architects, vendors. One example I give, there's an architect that I'm now working with in North Scottsdale. They kind of have their book of business. They do some incredible projects around the country. And again, this is the benefit is we've been advertising Mark La Liberte's home, the net zero house. We've been putting on YouTube. We put on our website. Well, their client found it and they said, we want to do net zero home. We want to do ICF. And this guy, Brad, he has content everywhere. Some of my videos may not have a ton of likes, but this client found him. And so he calls this architect saying, you need to get him in here. And so market to what you want to do. I want to build net zero. We have net zero product. I'll give a little shout out to Matt Reisinger. He came out here when we were doing Mark La Liberte's home. And again, this is to your point, Tyler. It's it's diversification on every channel because Matt comes out. We do a video with Mark. He puts it on YouTube. We all know Matt's following on YouTube. A client in New Mexico calls me, Brad, we had no idea that there's a builder building to this level in Phoenix. We're doing this, project over 10 million net zero in Paradise Valley. You're our builder. And we just broke ground last month. So, and that was 2 years ago. So I just think, continue to market on other platforms. Leads come from everywhere. Build relationships. It's all done in relationships at the end of the day.
Yeah, we put out that course on lead generation and marketing, and so many people, they want to know what's the best use of our time or our resources. Is it SEO? Is it social? Is it your website? And is it offline lead gen, right? Is it networking with your local community and professionals? And it's like, you have to hit all of them. Like, I don't know if I would put everything in one bucket as much as put that into 10 different buckets. And I think as you grow and as your business grows, you'll understand which buckets require more of your resources, and you can constantly alter and change that. It's just that, like, the market's changed, the landscape changed. 15 years ago, people didn't go online to begin their shopping process and their purchasing process. And the newer generation, like, that's everyone goes online to start determining that.
And it's so like contradicting to what I feel like I've promoted over the last, I mean, even the first few years of the podcast is like all of my marketing was social media. And at the time it was just because I was at a point in my career where I was getting a ton of lead flow. And as we grew, like similar to what Brad said, it's like we start marketing to a different, kind of clientele basis, like bigger projects, higher dollar value. And it's like those social media leads aren't being qualified anymore. And and you're spot on. It's like you start, for us, like now it's everything. It's like we're constantly doing print ads, we're constantly doing networking, we're doing SEO, we're doing social, and we're trying to basically sit here. It's like we have dials and we're like turning up the dial on each of them and seeing what's producing. I think it was Vaynerchuk that said it the other day. I was watching one of his keynotes, and he's in this room. He's talking about AI, and he goes, anyone in this room that raise your hand if you're in this room, if you no longer use Google to search for something and you use ChatGPT. And it was like 70% of the crowd was like, raise their hand. And he's like, the what you're missing here is the fact that you guys are all so focused on Google. I'm not saying Google is obsolete, but it's like, but think about what just happened. It's like, I don't Google anything anymore. Like I just open up ChatGPT and I ask the question because I know I'm going to get a more thorough response. And the other day I'm listening to this keynote and I'm like, hold on a second. So I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, pretend I'm not me and I'm searching for the top builder in Boston. Who would you recommend? And it puts my name up. I'm like, all right, I don't know if this is like because I'm talking to it, or
You're telling me what I want to hear,
or if like I'm doing so much on chat and pumping its information that it's like it knows that I'm there. But that's to your point, Tyler. It's like the landscape changed, and it changes almost so quickly that you don't even know. So it's like, yeah, Brad, you're talking about Google. I'm doing Google. I'm seeing a great response on Google. That's great. But now I'm sitting here. It's like, I'll continue to do that, but I need to think about like, all right, well, if chat's going to be the next area that people start, looking for builders, I need to be there, and I need to be there as quickly as I can. So I take number one spot, and no one has the opportunity to catch up to me.
But yeah, diversification, because the demographics different. I could tell you LinkedIn demographics different than print media. I mean, I still do some print, right?
You've been preaching LinkedIn for years, and listen, I have been so slow to take your advice, and I've finally I got 2 toes in the water, and it's like, yeah, it's paying off.
Dude, LinkedIn works. I'm telling you, it's the most organic platform with the best growth out of any of them. But I think where it can be simple to those listening is if you look at my content, even today, I don't do a lot of like pictures because those just don't do as well. They did years ago, but it's all video now. And today, I just mentioned when we started this, I was at a project that we just closed. I took my iPhone, and of course I have Jesse there doing YouTube, and we're going to have, 10, 20 videos on YouTube. That'll be great. But I take out my iPhone at 0.5, so it's a wide angle view, and I'll do a 1-minute view of the kitchen and the secret door. I'll do a 1-minute view of the golf simulator, of the hair salon off of the garage. These things do well. I mean, not everything's going to do great, but some go viral, some don't. But the point being is that same video, I'll do a video of the kitchen. It took me 1 minute to film. I'll put that on LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. It's the same video on all 4 platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, the demographics totally different.
Mm-hmm.
Some go viral, some don't. But you're hitting. It's not a lot of work. I mean, everyone
Yeah.
says I don't have the money. It's just me. It takes 1 minute
That's what I
for
was
me
going
to
to
do
ask
that
you. Do you
video.
have an ad budget like for the year? Do you account for an ad budget or no?
So I do now. I mean, I have a budget. It's not big. I mean, I'm paying a little bit through SEO, and
Is
I'm
it
paying.
based on a percentage of
No,
sales, or are you just so
no,
you just have a number? Okay.
no. So like, I haven't in years past. I have put money into advertising and demographics on Instagram and Facebook, pay to play. I don't like now. I've seen better. I put some money in SEO. I put some money in video, right, with Jesse. I'm paying him to do video content. And then I'm doing some print media through some targeted relationships, Modern Luxury, Scottsdale, Build Magazine, Lux on occasion. Those make sense in my market.
What
And so,
about all the awards? Are you working with a PR firm for that stuff?
great question. I'm not. I haven't had a PR firm my entire career. And so the awards come from relationships, meeting the right people,
Yeah.
pushing content, podcast speaking, you kind of meet the vendors. One thing I think is an untapped resource that a lot of people don't realize is when I go to IBS, KBiz, I'm from early on in my career, I'd search the vendors. I'm using their product. I'd find out who's doing their social media, build a relationship, share posts. I mean, you should be working with your vendors that, Kohler, Sub-Zero Wolf, now for me, Marvin, right? I mean, we moved to Marvin. I mean, that's going to be a great relationship for us as we try to bring Marvin out west. But yeah, I don't think it takes a ton of effort. It really doesn't. I mean, but you got to be on all the platforms, and that takes the effort to post it on those four specifically.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it winds up. I think that you can do it. You can spend money doing it, or you can spend a little bit of time doing it. But I don't. I feel so many people shy away from it just because they're overwhelmed by it, or they think, I don't know where to start. But it's not quite as difficult as it may seem. I mean, that's honestly the reason why we put our lead gen and marketing course to show you what we've used, like where you should spend your time and how easy it is to kind of regurgitate and recycle content and use it to your advantage, where it's like, yeah, I don't have to allocate 3% of my gross to ad money. Like, you can spend money when you need to, but you can also generate a lot of content on your own and have it live in many different areas, and then blend that with your offline lead gen for pretty good rewards. Like, none of us are in the position where we need to sell 200 jobs a year.
Right.
It's like if you're on 6 different platforms and you land 6 jobs a year, one from each platform, you're probably set.
That's such a great point, because I think that does get, like, you almost get blinded by it, where, like, even Brad, you've said it a couple times now. It's like, oh, I don't get a lot of likes on my videos. It's like, yeah, but who gives a shit? Like, you get one person that wants to do a $10 million net zero house.
Doesn't matter.
It's like, yeah. I don't care if I get any likes on that video. and people do get caught up in it. It's like, even me, like, I mean, we're looking, like, we've changed our YouTube strategy a month ago, and it's like, it's working and we're getting a shitload of views, but it's like, but it doesn't matter. Like, if I don't get a single person calling me like, hey, I watched your video, I want to build a house, it's like, what am I doing it for? Like, the marginal ad revenue, it's like, it's nothing at that point.
Well, it's funny you say that, because that's the point. I mean, to Tyler's point as well. I mean, what I have 16 projects under construction, which is a lot. I mean, they're very complicated. They're big projects, but I'm not looking for 200 clients. I'm looking for 16 now and 30 in backlog over the next 3 years. So it's a much more sniper approach. So make sure their content's created to that. But to your point, that vanity metric, Nick, we all get caught up in the vanity metrics, right? Mm-hmm. Followers, likes, but it doesn't matter. Like, that one client who, he's seen my YouTube stuff on ICF, but I don't get a ton of content on that. And that's why I'm such a big proponent of LinkedIn, because if I get 200 likes on Instagram, or I get 2,000 likes, again, that's the vanity metric, means nothing. But on LinkedIn, if Nick likes my post and Tyler likes my post, well, your whole network sees that Nick liked it and Tyler liked it. So now I get exposure to the whole network. If you like my Instagram, it's just a vanity metric. It means nothing.
How do you control the quality on your projects when you're doing 16 large scale jobs at a time?
Case in point today. So we have continual trainings. I mean, I mentioned we have 28 people, so we're pretty well staffed. Every project has a coordinator and superintendent assigned to it. They have a lot of systems in place. We have, a PM over them that's overlooking those projects. And more importantly, we have 4 to 6 walks per project where we bring the whole company out, strap and shear. We'll do it at frame inspection. We'll do of course, a final one. We're getting close to C of O a month out, and so we bring the whole company out. And although the superintendent knows the quality that we expect, they become snowblind. And so when you bring out 20 of your peers to tag the house and run the water and check the appliances and check the ice maker and tag your cabinetry, I mean, it's hard for things to get through the cracks when you have all these different team walks. And we'll do it early on too at pre-concrete, making sure that from plumbing to structural, that everything's in its right place, because so many projects have some pretty complicated undergrounds and they have complicated structural steel.
And most of your stuff's on slab, right?
Yeah, I would say most of it is. I mean, 70%. I mean, 30% are basements for us.
Yeah.
Or walkout basements. I mean, I have a couple right now that are true basements. I mean, in the East Valley, soil's a little bit different. We do a lot of basements, in Gilbert, Mesa, Chandler area, Queen Creek of Phoenix.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit more critical when you have utilities cast into slabs and you're trying to execute on a very high level. It doesn't make changes so easy. What about the conversation with clients, right, where they see what you do? And to me, like, the success of so many projects is based on the expectation set forth. And you market a certain way, you're promoting your business as a certain way, but we all know that it's not always that way in the real world, right? Jobs don't go perfectly. There's mistakes, there's redos. It's not as seamless as it may appear online. How do you approach those conversations and manage your clients' expectations as far as what this process is going to look like, and that it's not going to be perfect and there's going to be issues and there's going to be problem solving?
Yeah, that's a good point, Tyler. I think, 5 years ago, I had a client come in. It's pretty humbling when they sit in front of you and they're like, Brad, your sales pitch doesn't match your building process, and they're like, and so it kind of makes you say, okay, well, that's some great feedback. What am I missing? And you kind of reevaluate. We have a document called the emotional roller coaster that we give them, and it shows them the ups and downs, the pitfalls. Again, you become much more savvy to understand, even though drywall may be bid at 50,000, we're going to carry 58,000 in the line. And they'll be like, well, why? Well, because the nuance, you're going to have cabinetry that's not perfect. You're going to have countertops that's set plumb and level, and they're going to bang the drywall. We have to come back. You may have flush, baseboard with the drywall. And so you just learn the pain points that the customer has and you speak to those. And I think one thing we've chosen to invest, and this is definitely something in the last, call it 6-7 months, is I felt for us to go to the next level was invest in pre-con. And the way we do that, I think it's pretty rare for a company of our size, but I have 3 full-time estimators. And keep in mind, all of our work's negotiated. We're not really hard bidding a whole lot. So having 3, I mean, they are dialed in on the front end, because my goal is to get in front of the client at pre-con with the most accurate bid possible, doing our own takeoffs, our own database. I mean, they're leveraging quantities, so by having 3 people, they're spending a lot of time doing page turns. And so we'll sit down with the architect and we'll go through every page to make sure we're not missing any details and things that were really important to the architect or the client. Our designer team will sit down with our estimating team and do a page turn and go through every spec. We're creating bid abstracts we send out to the subs. And so the best way to answer that, Tyler, is really investing heavily in pre-con. And that's alleviated a lot of stress in the field so that guys can build more efficiently and ideally keep, their schedule on par.
What percentage of your work is signed on, paid pre-construction?
So I would say, it's really 100%. Every project that people see me, we're all under contract. However, I guess technically it's not 100, it'd maybe be 95, but there is the occasion where I've had 4 projects in the last 12 months where the clients reached out, or the customer, the architect, hey, Brad, we have a client. They want to get bids. They want you to bid it. And I'm like, no problem. It's 10 grand. Well, why is it 10 grand? Well, and that's back to the sales process. Well, it's going to take us 6 to 7 weeks to bid it. I have 3 estimators. They're going to spend all this time doing takeoffs and quantities. We're going to send it out for best and final numbers with the subs. We're going to cross-check that, check it with, similar projects. And so they have to understand the value. So of those 4 that I bid, we were awarded 2 of them, and the other 2, they decided not to go with us, but they still, they paid us up front. They didn't ask for a refund, and they actually never pushed back, shockingly. I've only had, I think, 6 inquiries about that. 4 accepted, 2 said, yeah, we don't want to pay you to bid it.
And typically it's a much larger financial contract and probably a more comprehensive process. Like, you're going into it as if that job is guaranteed yours. You want to build this job out and negotiate this project to execute a contract.
Exactly. I mean, that's part of the skin in the game for the client, is so I can go to my subs and say, they've paid us to bid this project. This is not a pie in the sky. And then now it allows our trades to know that they're not just wasting time. I mean, you could lose, I don't want to say credibility, but trades are busy. They're exhausted just throwing out bids. So if you're not winning and awarding them, and you're just bidding all the time, you're not going to get the best numbers anyways. I mean, this allows us to go to the client and say, we're going to get you great numbers, because the trade partners we're sending out to, I mean, they know that we have a vested interest in this project.
Yeah. I know that we're running shorter on time. So one thing I wanted to dig into as we kind of wrap things up, as you've grown your team, and even like we discussed earlier, where you go on Instagram and AFT's little thumbnail image is Brad, it's not it's not your logo. You have to maintain some sort of a leadership mentality, and whether that was your intent moving into this or not, what personal mindsets or shifts within your mindset did you have to make in order to make scaling necessary with your business from like a leadership mentality?
Well, from a marketing side, I'll answer first, Tyler. I think that, personal branding is permanent job security, right? And so there is an element to the personal brand. And I think there is value to the end user to say, hey, Brad has children, right? He's a father. He cares about his employees. I mean, truth be told, I hired Jude. We're going to be doing filming over the next 6 months to kind of show life behind the scenes of what AFT is, our core values, and how that plays a role in day to day, as well as my personal life, and how the two are intertwined. It's opened up channels of, let's be honest, there's ambassadorship, right? There's companies that, I'm fortunate to represent, and, and because of that, they know that we have a building company that uses that product, and there's a face behind it. So there's right, wrong, and different. There's a credibility to that, to the vendors. From a leadership side, I think it's really important for my team internally to know where I stand, where my values are, what makes me me, that personal side of things, and why the core values are what they are. I mean, we have 11 core values that our team memorizes. They have them all. We have little cards, and they memorize it. They get a little gift when they memorize it. Every production meeting, we assign one of the team members to speak about the core value of their choice, for 5 minutes. So I think top down, Tyler, is there has to be a lot of coordination between the two. Now, that may not be it for everyone. That's been my strategy. I feel that it's worked well for our brand and our product and, our people. And, in fairness, they have their own Instagrams to feed into it, right? Anyone to go, all my employees have Janelle at AFT Construction, Ryan at AFT, Paul at AFT. They all have them, and they believe in the brand and the company, and they know what we stand for, and they want to be part of it.
How do you continue to develop yourself as a leader within the industry? Because I think that there's probably a lot of people who come to you or come to events or listen to you speak or would, love a mentorship with you. But what do you do to better yourself and become a more robust leader within your business?
That's a great question, Tyler. What's interesting is just a shameless plug here. When I started my podcast like 6 years ago, I was doing it for branding. I was doing it because I had met interesting people. I'll be honest, I'm probably like you guys. I mean, my podcast is a little bit different, as you guys know. Like I'm not going to compete against Modern Craftsman. You guys definitely have the construction
Come
market taken.
on. Come on.
Let's go, buddy.
But in fairness, my podcast has always been entrepreneurship. And so I feel fortunate that for 6 years now, 300 episodes in, I've had entrepreneurs that have created successful businesses, CEO of Traeger Grills, right? Stan Socks Marketing, like, of course, Shay Suda McGee's been on yours, and I've had professional athletes, and so you get these people on, and for an hour, like I'm downloading information right there for free that I apply for my podcast, and attending a lot of the networking events, and there are industry events. I like to read. I think that's really important. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I mean, I'm a big podcast guy. I have a lot of windshield time. Anyone that's been to Phoenix knows we drive a lot, commute a lot. So, I just think, and again, one thing that I cannot discredit at all, and it'd be a failure to do so, is I'm fortunate to work for some of the best clients ever. And what I mean by that is because of the projects we have, these are incredibly intelligent people. I'll give one quick example, Tyler, is I was going through a personnel challenge with one of my employees, and we are building for a client out of Boston. I think Nick's spoken to him because he's thinking about maybe doing something out there. But this client in particular had the largest windshield company in the country. I mean, incredible. One of my other clients has one of the largest software companies. And I'll go to him and be like, hey, Nick, hey, Tyler, I'm dealing with this challenge. Like, how would you have solved this? So I go to my clients. There's a vulnerability there because I want to portray myself that we know what we're doing right all the time. But I think in fairness to them, they want to mentor me. They see something in me. They love that I'm inquisitive about it. So I go to all my clients. I mean, Brian Harris, who, he's given me mentorship on marketing, right? He's one of the top cosmetic dentists in the country. And so having this diversity of clients, why not ask them? So I ask my clients direct, the podcast. I think there's just a lot of forms of interesting people, and I'm not afraid to ask them questions.
It's funny that you say that because even like interviews, holding yourself accountable and surrounding yourself with people who are better than you, it takes a certain amount of confidence to do that. But even consulting clients, I'm like, the dirty little secret is like, I'm learning so much from this while you're paying to like have me walk you through your problems, right? But like, so what ends up happening is, yeah, I can help you with your problems, but then I can internalize this and relay it to problems that I experience, and then also other people that I speak with. So now a challenge that somebody had on a consulting call, I can then relay that to somebody else. And what would you do in this situation? And it's actually bettering me, not just that consulting client. And it's the same thing with the podcast and just having conversations, with you, other people at CCS. Obviously, my relationship with Nick over the past 10 years. And it's this dirty little secret where people don't know, like, your clients are paying you to build them a house, and they're also providing information and insight and knowledge and expertise to you that you're tapping into, which is pretty cool.
I think half of my clients have been on my podcast. That's what's funny.
And really?
Every single one of them have given me advice, every single one. And I asked, and it's incredible because they want to. I mean, you'd be amazed. They sometimes.
I think everyone wants that. Like, yeah. I mean, like they're talking to you because they're interested in what you do too. It's like it is, Tyler, like you said, like a little dirty secret that someone's asking for my advice, but I'm secretly learning from them. But even if they knew that, it's like, it doesn't matter. It's there's this, when there's this expectation of having a really deep rooted conversation in something, I think that's what, people oftentimes lack, right? Like, especially in their close knit group, it's like, a lot of people just, have friends or people that they grew up with that just are very dissimilar. And I think what social media has done, at least for me specifically, it's like, yeah, like everyone I grew up with, like I'm still friendly with, but I've really built this core group of people that I looked up to as friends and mentors, like you two being two of them, where it's like we didn't grow up together. We don't even live in the same states, but we can talk to each other about really difficult things in our life. And sometimes it's just the ability to say it. And I don't even need a response sometimes. And I know like you guys feel the same way. It's just, having a more, what's the word I'm looking for? But like real, like having a more real conversation,
intimate conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is, you bring up CCS, and to Tyler's point, we've had 6 of these now. You have 30 guests come, and all of them have different experience questions, and some are extremely savvy in the building industry. So learning from them who attend, learning from both of you and Morgan, I just, the more you put yourself out there, and I don't know, like I always say, generosity precedes prosperity, right? You put yourself out there, like people bring it back.
We appreciate you hopping on the podcast.
Yeah,
Taking time out of your day. Can't be easy with everything you got going on,
That's why you scale, man, to make time for Tyler and Nick.
Hell yeah. Anything you got going on that you need to plug?
Yeah, just some amazing projects. We got the podcast. IBS is coming up, so we have some fun things out there. Again, join us in June for CCS, the Contractor Coalition Summit. You can have Tyler and Nick there. It's that one's going to be pretty incredible.
Well, speaking of IBS, we're going to be at we have a kickoff
Monday
happy
night.
hour.
Oh, yeah, in Vegas.
Yeah,
February
there's a lot
24th.
of people attending. Yeah,
I believe that's in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, we started, Mark Williams, who we all know, and he's been on my podcast and, one of our number one fans from the CCS. But he started that Curious Builder Collective, and it's pretty neat. We're doing a networking group here in Phoenix.
That's awesome.
And so our first event is the Friday before IBS, and it's sold out. We have a huge demand here of builders going, and it's going to be great networking. So I don't know. There's some good things happening. From a business perspective, we have some pretty exciting things. I guess the one thing I'll say, Tyler, maybe we can announce here is my brother and I purchased some land, and we did years ago. I did a commercial development that I was part of, and there was one pad left that we ended up taking out of the partnership. My brother and I purchased, and we're going to be building our own office for AFT and Alignment Steel.
Oh, that's
and
cool.
It's going to be, so I'm going to downsize from both offices to this one. It's going to be an incredible office. The plan is to break ground in April, be done in October, and it'll be our new headquarters. And I don't know, it's going to be a pretty fun place. We're going to have golf simulator and a weight room and cold plunge and sauna and all these fun things.
That's sick.
So the employees can go date night. They can go play on the golf simulator and have date night, whatever they want.
Man, that's cool. Congrats.
Thanks, man.
That's sweet. Funnily enough, I think I'm going to start swimming soon.
So stupid.
So I might reach out to you to get some swimming advice.
Yeah, I'm happy. Breaststroke, backstroke, what do you want, bro? Come on.
Oh, man.
Doggy paddle for me.
Freaking Tyler.
Oh, God. Never ends.
Dude. You're the best.
Thanks, man. Advice. Appreciate it. I guess we'll see you soon, huh?
Yeah, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a few weeks, man.
Awesome.
All right, dude. Love Brad. And I literally thought you were serious about him swimming. I'm like, how the hell do I not know that he's a swimmer?
No, he's
like,
not.
But he's kind of got the body.
He does have a swimmer's body. I haven't seen his whole body, but he's tall and rather slender.
Tyler, the only builder contractor that's seen or that we've seen the entire body of is yours.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm not even saying just me. Like everyone that's been on the podcast has seen your whole body.
Everyone.
For better or for worse.
No, I don't. It's funny. I don't see Brad that much. I guess a decent amount, but it's not like I see him, 10 times a year. But he's a really good person. I get along with him very well. Super knowledgeable, like always willing to take the time to answer questions. I think that he's grown his business pretty quickly and has become pretty savvy working for the clients that he has and really getting into the business that he has. So there's a lot of insight and knowledge that you can pick up from him.
He even just casually dropped his backlog, or I think I want to say it was 3 years or something like that, like 30 in the queue or something.
Yeah.
It's like, that's crazy.
Yep.
And it's like, to think about building out a backlog like that. That's, I mean, Scottsdale, I'm not discrediting his efforts at all. Scottsdale is an insane market. But for him to be gobbling up that, those leads and converting them and getting them to sign on a 3-year wait, like, kudos. It's super impressive. He's only been in business, just under a year longer than I have. And I look up to him in terms of how he's grown and scaled. And, certainly as someone that I bounce my crazy ideas off of on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Make sure you head over to moderncraftsman.co. We got some goodies up on the website, but most importantly, scroll all the way to the bottom. Sign up for our newsletter. We send out a weekly newsletter with some additional information about every episode that comes out. And we're going to be adding to that. We're going to be including some more freebies. We got a bunch of stuff coming out in terms of the information that we have been curating for you guys. We want to be more actionable and give you guys real content. And if you missed the launch last week, we launched the pre-construction version 2.0. Enrollment is closed. So thank you for everyone that did join that. And if you did, make sure you join the private Facebook community where we can have a nice open dialogue about all the things that we've included in that. And for those that didn't, well, you'll have to sit tight.
Yeah, but thanks everyone who enrolled in the course and is supporting what we're doing here on the podcast. And that's a huge help for us. And we want to be able to get you any information that you need. If you have questions, if you need help, if you're stuck on something, reach out to us. You can reach out to hello@moderncraftsman.co, Tyler@trghomeconcepts.com, hop on the Facebook group, whatever you need. We want to make sure that we can help you. And that was a big reason why we decided to limit the enrollment period for this course. So we want to make sure that you are as successful as possible. So as you're going through the course, if you have any questions, let us know. And that's just one way that we're going to say thank you for really trusting us and enrolling and becoming a student within this. So thanks.